So yeah, I finally managed to watch the series Monarch Legacy of Monsters on Apple TV, which is part of the Monsterverse, of course, and I'm gonna review it now. I just wanted to say first that I'm gonna tell you my general opinion rapidly on each episode, considering it's only 10, and after that I would give a general review and more of what could have been done better and maybe what was already done very well. Without any further ado, let's get into the video. This contains spoiler, by the way, so yeah, I guess if you don't want to get spoiled because you didn't see the show yet, definitely not recommended to watch this video. I would definitely shut off now. But once you've seen the show, definitely come back. Now, let's start off with the first episode. Aftermath, that's what the first episode is called, and honestly, it's a pretty good start to the series. Now, if I have some issues, the main character is kind of rude when answering to people and generally not very nice. It's not like she's getting hated or something. It's not like I say I hate her, but it's perhaps not the best way to make a character likable so far. But I see some potential in this plot with Kate, Kentaro, and Mei. I do think the strongest part so far is definitely the plot back in the 50s with Keiko, Bill Randa, and Lee Shaw. That's definitely a bit better done. Keiko's death generally really surprised me. I did not expect her to die. So yeah, I see definitely some good potential. Godzilla and the monsters didn't appear that much yet, but that's normal. It's a show. So yeah, definitely has some potential. 8 out of 10 so far. Episode 2 is called Departure, and it's a pretty good continuation of the first episode. It doesn't necessarily improve that much, but it's pretty much at the same level, and it's still pretty good. Again, I'm still not too sold on the characters Kentaro, Mei, and Kate. They do need a bit more improvement going on in the series because they're not that deep and you don't really sympathize for them. But I do really like the other plot in the 50s. The characters there, Keiko, Bill, and Lee, they are very likable. I generally really sympathize with them. So far, it's still a pretty good episode. A bit continuing the story again with Kate and so on, trying to find her dad. And it also shows how Lee, Bill, and Keiko met. That was a pretty good story. I really liked this episode. 8 out of 10 yet again. Episode 3 is the best episode so far. I really enjoyed, again, the 50s plot, kind of where the scene where they're trying to nuke Godzilla. What I don't think is that great is that now Shinomura is not canon anymore. Like, were the comics even canon? Like, there are so many continuity issues within the Monsterverse. But apart from that, I really enjoyed that scene and the full, story around it where, Bill, Keiko, and Lee, they're trying to get money from the government to make Monarch an actual organization. And the plot in 2015 with Lee, who is now older, Kate, Kentaro, and Mei, that is also kind of better done than in the previous episodes. It's kind of expanding. It's kind of, building upon this plot, and it's doing pretty well. So far, this episode is a 9 out of 10. Really enjoyed it. Episode 4, here it starts to go downhill. Now, there is this plot explaining how Mei and Kentaro meet each other. There should be some emotions in these scenes. The intention by the producers was clear to put some emotions in these scenes, but it fell flat for me. I did not feel anything, which is definitely not intended. And then I like the fact that they were showcasing more of the Frostworks powers. I love how they're kind of showcasing it more, giving it more screen time, showing how it kind of absorbs fire and then heat. That was pretty cool, but the rest, it was not bad. At least it pushed the story forward, but it could have been shorter. Like, the story dragged itself. It felt so long, even though it was the shortest episode so far. And that's not supposed to happen, of course. I did not like how Kentaro kind of had beef with the other characters. That was also kind of like annoying. Kate at least was not annoying. Kate did not say that much. She kind of got ignored in that episode. But at least she kind of motivated May. That's the only thing she did, and at least she wasn't annoying in this episode. Like, that was one of the few good things, but that just doesn't make the episode good. It's still a 5 out of 10. Okay, it's not as bad as the next episode, but I mean, it's okay. It's okay. Episode 5. This episode, it's not really needed. It's the biggest filler episode I've seen in any show. Like, really, there's not anything going on. Like, the only thing that is important is them finding some information in their father's office. That's about 5 minutes. Like, that's about 5 minutes. You could have used that in 5 minutes, and that's it. You could have attached it to the end of the previous episode, to the beginning of the other episode. It's really a filler episode. There's not much going on. They're kind of trying to expand on Kate's backstory to make you sympathize more with her. But the fact is that it turns out she had a girlfriend. Kate had a girlfriend, and she cheated on her girlfriend before the 2014 attack. And I know that's supposed to have a tragic backstory, and I know she feels guilty for this, but I don't know, when you cheat on your girlfriend, I don't really sympathize with you, because that's clearly something wrong. For example, in Godzilla -1, I know I should not compare these two. There are definitely two completely different things with different intentions, but I don't know. In Godzilla -1, the guilt feeling is wrong, which is why you kind of sympathize with the character. Here, you know, they're trying to sympathize with the character, but I don't know, she did something completely wrong, and you can't really sympathize with someone who did something like this. So yeah, that's why it kind of... But yeah, this episode could have been ignored completely. Nobody would have cared. The only important thing is about 5 minutes, and it's one of the longest episodes, if not the longest episode. That's probably the worst part too. 3 out of 10, really just no. Episode 6 is an improvement over the last few episodes. I liked, for example, how they awakened Godzilla in Algeria. That was pretty good. The vibe of the full scene was actually really well done. The plot in 2015, the modern day plot, it's kind of starting to come back after it fell down in episode 4. The 1950s plot, however, it was not bad, of course. I still prefer it over the modern day plot, but I'm not sure what I think about Lee's and Keiko's relationship, or at least somewhat almost relationship, because Keiko is already kind of married to Bill. I think they're married. I mean, they're kind of raising a child together, but I don't exactly know what to think about that, because she also has a kind of relationship with Lee, and she almost that way cheated on Bill. It doesn't really fit the characters at all. Like, I don't think these characters would do it. I would have never trusted them to do such a thing. They didn't in the end, but like, even coming up with the thought of doing that. So yeah, that did not kind of fit the characters at all. But apart from that, pretty strong episode. 8 out of 10, yeah. Definitely an improvement over the last few episodes. Let's hope it continues that way. Episode 7 was not what I was hoping for, to be honest. I liked that they were trying to do some world building, kind of expanding on the universe. I mean, they showed how May actually worked for Apex before leaving them and betraying them. And I like the fact that they're trying to give Apex as a whole company more of a backstory, rather than just saying, yeah, it's an evil company. By the way, if you don't remember, that's the company who built Mechagodzilla in Godzilla vs. Kong. And yeah, that was well done. The writing has definitely some issues. There are some really odd dialogues in here, but that's something that happens kind of in a few different episodes, more than once in quite many episodes in the modern day plot, not really in the 50s plot, more in the modern day plot. And yeah, as I said, I like the world building. I was not the biggest fan of the writing in here. But another thing is, this episode does not exactly push the story forward. While it is interesting, but they don't continue with the story. Like, it's not a continuation or something. It doesn't exactly bring you to the next episode. It's just more of something happening, but not that much. Like, again, you could have missed out this episode. This couldn't even exist and it wouldn't matter that much. Again, just like in episode 5, it's only like 5 to 10 minutes which are actually important. But I still give it a 6 out of 10 because of the interesting world building. Episode 8, it's fine, but it doesn't exactly stand out alone. Like, it can't work as a single episode. It does not work because I think 90% of this episode is kind of preparing you for the last 10% and the next 2 episodes. So it's interesting and it's bringing you to the next part of the story. It's pushing the story forward, but it just doesn't do that much. So it's a 7 out of 10. At least it's pushing the story forward, unlike episode 5 and 7, but alone it does not really work. Episode 9 was actually pretty good. Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed the moment where they kind of explained why Lee looks so young, even though he should be 90 years old, and that was all really well done. What I did think was pretty weird, though, was, for example, some of the continuity issues in the Monsterverse, because new ones are building up. For example, Kate, May, and Lee, they enter the Hollow Earth as a person, but they don't have any armor. They aren't in a vehicle or anything. They just enter and they're pretty much fine. In Godzilla vs. Kong, they needed the special type of vehicles, the Heaves, to enter the Hollow Earth because the gravity inversion would have crushed them. Why did they manage to enter without any issues here in this series? Like, are they built different? What? And episode 9 also brings up some new continuity issues besides the one I already mentioned at the end, because we see Keiko is still alive. You know what? I'll get to that in the next episode because it's kind of explained more in episode 10. So yeah, this episode, 8 out of 10, pretty good. Brings up some continuity issues. Episode 10 was peak. I really enjoyed this episode. Let's start off with the positives. The final battle between Godzilla and the Iron Dragon is fire. It's not much of a final battle considering Godzilla absolutely cooked the Iron Dragon, but it was still really entertaining. Godzilla showed some pretty cool brawling abilities, and yeah, it was generally really well done. I liked Godzilla's entrance, that was fire. Yeah, I'm surprised Lee actually died in that episode. Like, I had the feeling he would die while watching the other episodes, but I still turned out to be surprised when he actually died in the last episode. All the characters weren't annoying in this episode. That was pretty cool. And I like the scene where Kate, Lee, May, and Keiko, who turned out to be alive, re-emerge on Skull Island. The reunion between Keiko and her son, and also, you know, Kate with Kentaro and her father. That was really cool. Well done. The scene where Kong beats his chest is pretty cool in the final moments of the show. That was so cool. And the scene where Keiko realizes she must have been in the Hollow Earth for about 50 or 60 years. That was so cool. I really enjoyed that. It was a really powerful scene with some emotions. I do have to say that this thing with the Hollow Earth time slipping does indeed bring up some issues, because basically the time in the Hollow Earth moves way slower than on the surface. But what happened in Godzilla vs. Kong? Like, in Godzilla vs. Kong, there was no such time problem. Like, that never happened in Godzilla vs. Kong. And you know, that's again a continuity issue, which I'm really not the biggest fan of, because now Shinomura is not any canon anymore. Godzilla vs. Kong contrasts against Monarch Legacy of Monsters, and you know, there is so much stuff that just kind of doesn't work. But it was still fire, so I still give it a 10 out of 10 this episode. Apart from the issue with the continuity, it was still pretty good, so yeah. So overall, I think this show was actually pretty good. Sure, it was not perfect, but it was definitely an enjoyable watch. I especially like the world building around the series, kind of this expansion around the Monsterverse. That was really well done. And yeah, of course the monsters don't appear that much, but I think it's understandable considering it's a series. I still think they could have shown them a little bit more, but overall, when these monsters appeared, it was always pretty badass, so I'm not gonna complain too much on that. I do have to say that I'm kind of disappointed, not necessarily by the quality of the series. I mean, I do think that some of the writing and some, I don't know, characters and character conversations, they were kind of odd. And as I already mentioned, I like the 50s plot, but the modern day plot sometimes was kind of weak. But I'm more disappointed by the possibilities that the director and writers didn't take. For example, there is not a single mention of Muto Prime. Like, that would have been so bad. It's just seeing Muto Prime in the show, but they just kind of excluded that. Or, for example, I don't know, they could have used any other Titan. For example, they could have used the Titans which barely got shown, for example, Behemoth, Methuselah, or any other Titan. Or, for example, the unused Titans. They could have been shown in this series, but they just didn't appear, which is kind of disappointing. But overall, the series is still not bad. It has flaws, but it's definitely an enjoyable watch, as I already said. So I also have to mention that perhaps the last episode, it doesn't kind of change my final rating for the series, but it kind of does give me a more positive general perception of the series. However, I'll still give this series a 7.5 out of 10. Definitely enjoyable. I like the world building, has some issues, but overall not bad. That was a pretty long video. What did you think of Monarch Legacy of Monsters? Did you think it's better than what I said and better than my opinion, or did you think it was worse than in my opinion? Let me know in the comments. I've seen both people say it's pretty good and people say it was kind of mid, but it got generally positive reviews. And yeah, that's it for today. See ya, guys. See ya next time.